So I'm a huge fan of reading the heckin' manual. And the first step of making your library fit for public consumption is to actually create that manual. Our next speaker is a community engineer and will be telling us all about writing and reading docs. Everyone give a warm welcome to Kim Crayton.
Whoa, hello, hello, hello. I am high energy, low energy right now. So we'll see where this rocks. I don't know what's going to happen. But welcome to What the Docs, how to write and read documentation that allows you to get shit done. So this is who I am. I'm Kim Crayton. I am Kim Crayton 1. I have a new podcast, Community Engineering Report, which focuses on inclusion, diversity, and safe spaces in tech, having real, honest conversations and stop with the bullshit. I have Junior Dev Mentoring, which is my first open source project, which it also has a Slack channel. People are going on there to find mentors. And I do a workshop called Taming the Wild West, which helps people transition into tech. And I've just been writing this hashtag a lot lately. We can do better. I don't know. It's just like, that's just the, so I just like, I'm gonna appropriate that, and I'm gonna get some stickers, and I'm just gonna pass them out. We can do better. That's all I'm gonna say. People say something stupid. We can do better. We can do better. We can do better. So that's who I am. So basically, I come at all of this from a point of being a newbie. I am an educator by trade, so I understand how people learn. And when I entered this tech space, and I love you guys so much, but you suck. You so suck when it comes to onboarding new people, or letting new people, or even people who have had years of experience, just introducing your stuff to other people. I mean, you're just really bad at it. It's just like, somebody will say, oh, you need to download this, and then you go there, and it's just like, what am I supposed to do with this? And then you go on somebody's Slack channel or Stack Overflow, and they just go rattling off all this other stuff, and you're like, again, what am I supposed to do with this? So this is what this is. It's to me, documentation, if you saw it like this, you're telling a story, once upon a time, and you end with the end. If you saw it that way, I'm thinking maybe people wouldn't be so, yeah, but I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. Well, I have to do this. Because you want people to be able to use your stuff effectively. You want people to be able to share your stuff effectively. So these are some considerations when you're writing documentation you need to think about. If there's any chance that somebody new is going to come across this documentation, think about creating a separate document for them. Just link to it. It's that simple. Why give them 15 steps when all they need is 3 to get started? So you just really just beat them down with a whole bunch of stuff that does not matter. They can't get started, they're frustrated, and they never get anything done. So if you know that there's a chance that, when I was at the Closure conference, and I don't even remember the name of it, but there's a very essential package that people need to get the thing up. He's like, oh yeah, newbies and people, they struggle with this. Well, just make something simple for them. Can they just do 3 steps instead of, he's like, yeah, I never thought of it that way. And it's like people don't think about that. You think about it from your perspective. When people are coming to your documentation, I want you to think of the lowest common denominator. And it's not that they're stupid. Just think of how simple can I make this? Because the people who will be offended by it, who cares? Give them another sheet. But you will never grow this community when you have language and documentation that puts people off. They can't connect to it. And so that's what you want to do. You want to connect to it. Use inclusive pronouns, we, us, our, ourselves, because it's also about building community, particularly for open source projects. It's about trying to get people involved, engaged, to do a whole bunch of free stuff for you. So you want to make sure they feel included in all of this. Don't assume the acronyms aren't cute. If I got to go to Wikipedia and end up with 20 pages open because you used a word that I still don't get, it's just not necessary. It's not necessary at all. I have a background in, as I said, in education. I'm a certified special needs teacher. I had a room of 10 people with all different abilities, and I had to figure out how to make each one of them understand. Don't get over people's heads. Figure out how to use, and I'll have some suggestions on how to do this. Keep it simple, Spock, but we know it's not Spock, but I didn't want to offend anybody. If there's any, so that's the whole thing. If you can use it in 5 letters, use it in 5 letters. If you want to show off that you are a senior, blah, 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 put that in your bio. This is not the time to impress people. You want people to be able to get shit done. And think about what this is. It is to get stuff done, not for you to impress people or you to, to win some, I don't know. Remember that your audience is not you. So you may have to learn a new way of communicating. This is what I tell people who want to mentor as well when I do my mentoring talks. Sometimes it's best not to have a mentor than a bad mentor. Sometimes you don't need to be around documentation because you suck. You can't communicate. You just aren't good at it. You may have it in your head, and this is why people don't think education is so easy. Oh, I can do that. Being able to get this to somebody else is a very hard process. And so being able to, if you don't get it, if you give it to someone and they read it and they're like, what? Then work on it. It's nothing wrong with your style, but as we know, people learn differently. I learn from videos. I hate reading documentation. If somebody could create an animated documentation that would walk, oh man, I would be in heaven. I would really get that going. I mean, I could just stop and pause and laugh, but that's just me. But if your writing is not if you're not just good at effective communication, you need to work on that. Documentation, is not a one-time event. It's a living document. So every time something changes, you need to bite the bullet and update the documentation. It needs to flow. It needs to make sense. Again, you're telling a story. You're getting people engaged in what you're doing and why they're there. You need to incorporate feedback. So again, if you put something up there and you need to have a way for people to say, hey, I don't understand what this is, or what do you mean by that, or get your colleagues to look over it. So you need to incorporate feedback. And with that feedback, treat it like an ebook. You just put up another version. And it will be a bonus if you can make these things searchable. If, as a newbie, there's one thing I'm looking for, I could search the documentation and that pops up. That would be, I don't know the technology, but that's what you guys are here for. I'm in a room full of my fellow nerds. You can figure this out. So make stuff searchable, make it easy. And then I thought about when the first talk about accessibility. How are we making documentation accessible? I didn't even think about that until she was talking this morning. But we need to be able to make that documentation accessible so those people can work in this field. When we're talking about inclusion and diversity, we're not just talking about gender and race. And we're talking about all people. Anybody who wants to be able here and tell their story, they should be able to be able to do that. So from a reader standpoint, you need to know, and this is for you newbies, because all you seniors know everything. So you need to know why you're there. What problem are you solving? Because I can tell you, I don't know how many times that I'm working with somebody and I'm asking them, like my mentee, I don't know what she was doing, but I was like, why are you doing this? Because something happened way up here, but you didn't solve that way up here, so why are you way down here solving a problem you haven't even gotten to yet? That's an issue that a lot of newbies don't understand because there's so much information, it's so overwhelmed, they don't know what's valuable, they don't know what's out there. So this is what this documentation is going to help them with. But they need to know why they're there. What problem are they trying to solve? So when you're working with somebody or when you're thinking about creating documentation, you need to make it clear what problem your product or solution is trying to solve. They need to think about, if you're reading this, are there other ways that I can solve this? Do I even need to use this? Because you need to be able to research that. You need to be able to say, I don't know if this is something I need or not. If you're a newbie, make sure you look for the newbie-friendly documentation. So I'm saying this as if it is, so that you guys can, you get what I'm saying? I'm acting like you've already created this. It's not a suggestion. It's just, it's already happened. So you've all added newbie-friendly, I don't see enough heads nodding. You've all added newbie-friendly documentation to your sites, your projects. Yes, okay, that's what we've done. So if you're a newbie, go look for that. Make sure you read the abstract, which I'm going to talk about, an introduction. It's like reading the back of a book. You pick up a book, turn it over on the back, or you open it to see what it's about. That's what needs to be in your documentation. Read the code of conduct. Do some research before asking questions and include that, what you find in your question. So it helps. So that's why they have to know why they're there if this is solving the problem, because when they come to your process that asks questions, because you've already created right? You've already created, yeah, okay. So when they come to that, they give you, oh, I remember my first times on Stack Overflow, and people kept saying, what's your stack trace? I was like, what the hell are you talking about? What? Because nobody would explain it. And they just kept saying, and getting frustrated. Well, I'm frustrated too, because I don't know what the hell you're talking about. If I knew what this thing was, trust me, I provide it so it can answer my questions. So make sure, if you're a newbie, you have all that information prepared. And then follow the style guidelines. We're going to talk about that. You have style guidelines, right? Yeah. And offer to help. If you're a newbie, offer to help the project. If you see things that aren't there that will be useful, if you're new to this thing, offer to provide that. Offer to say, hey, this would have been helpful for me. Can I help you with that? So once upon a time, so there are 3 areas that you need to concern yourself with. People who are being introduced to your projects, people who use it, and people who want to contribute. And then there are types of documentation. And when I update this, I'm going to add accessibility documentation. But you have documentation for experienced developers, because experienced developers know why they're there. They want to get in, get dirty, get the stuff they need, and move on. So they shouldn't be held up with simple language. And this is not a one-size-fits-all solution if you want to be effective. Again, being a special needs teacher, it was differentiated instruction. So I'm providing different platforms, different opportunities for people to come into my projects. Then you have something for newbies. And then you have something for foreign language users. Because if English is their second language, some of these things they may not understand. Even though, everything we're doing is in English, but your documentation, if you don't write well and you can't communicate well, may be very confusing. It's not the same thing as writing a function. And more importantly, it's for the non-technical people. We all know that we might have managers who have absolutely no clue what you're doing. I have people in my life today, when I say code, they say medical transcription. They have no idea what this is. They don't even realize that it touches everything in their lives at this point. So we really need to help facilitate a more technical community, a more technical, we just need to do better at helping those who are not technical become technical by using very simple language. Because these people are going to have to, we might know about Node and these packages, but some manager, somebody might have to go look this thing up, and it's like, what is this thing? What does it do? Why am I using it? Why is my team using it? Because I have to make an assessment on us. I have to allocate resources to this thing. But I don't know what this thing is, so I'm going to fight them. Okay, now this is, because we talk about when it's your pain. When your manager starts fighting you because you want to use something because they don't understand it, that's an issue. So we want to make that simple. So we're going to create an abstract. I'm a big person in research. So every article I'm reading now has an abstract. So this is what we want to start with. You know how when you were in school you had an intro, a body, and a conclusion? Same thing, an intro, body, and conclusion. So you're going to create an abstract, which says, what does this thing do? What problem does it solve? Like, who are we? Who are we? What problem are we trying to solve? Or is it used to solve a problem? Because I know it solves this problem, I may not know how to use it to solve that problem or how it's intended to be used to solve that problem. Also list all the other requirements, the other tools, because that is a pain when you think, oh man, I was trying to get a Ruby environment up. First of all, you guys need to be honest. I'm sick of all the lies. You need to start telling newbies how hard it is to do with your job, because what you're doing is devaluing what you do, and that's why everybody and their mama think they can do this job. And that's why every boot camp says, oh, you can do this and do this for 3 months and you can get a $70,000 job minimum. And then people are out of their doggone, left their jobs to go to this thing full time, can't get a job afterwards, and they're pissed and they've got an Uzi ready to shoot somebody. So this was my story. People lied. Yeah, they lied. Oh, coding is easy, so okay. So go through these little online courses. Then somebody says, oh, Kim, help me on this project. And I have a blank text editor, and I'm like, I don't know what to do with this thing. They're like, oh, you need to use this. I was using one of the IDs online. And they were like, oh, it's easy. I mean, it's easier because you don't have to, but they can do the Ruby Rails install thing. Nope. It took me 2 weeks to get that thing up. And I turned it on myself because I thought I had a problem, because no one told me that you guys have issues too. You need to be honest about that. Please tell people this. Because I'm thinking, what the hell am I doing wrong? Every time I install something, I get that doggone message, that's out of date, or you need to install this next thing. And then I was like, okay, wait a minute. All I want to do is I haven't even started coding yet. I'm just trying to get this thing to move. And so you need to have all that stuff up there with explanations. And then links to the Newbie page. So you have the basic instructions and you define terms. And to you, it may seem, oh, I don't have time for this. But in the long run, when you don't have a newbie bothering you, pinging you, asking you simple questions, because you can say, I put that in the documentation. Have you read the documentation? If you read the documentation, you still don't understand it, then we can have a conversation, but until you read the documentation. But if it's not there, you have no legs to stand on. So you want to make sure you define terms. You want to make sure anything that somebody who's new, English as a second language, any questions they may have, you may want to put that in there. So now this is the body. So you want to include step-by-step instructions on setting up and using the project. Again, it might seem like a lot of work up front, but with most things, a lot of work is required up front if you wanted to coast in the back end. What happens is we want to skip steps, and then we end up filling it in the back end. So, and you want to link to any external documentation that helps someone understand the process. Stack Overflow, videos, anything that you can put in there that helps them understand your product, what it does, how it does it, who's using it, how they're using it. You want to put all that in, because you should have that stuff anyway. So you want to put all that in your documentation. And you want to add updating documentation a part of the merge process. Every time you merge something, you want to make sure you've updated the documentation. Now, for you people who merge all day long, then you just need to make sure you have a process in place. Get your little bot. You know, you guys are always creating bots. Create a bot that'll put that in there. It's just easy. It just goes blah, 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 and you're done. But you need to make sure it's not, that's me. Yeah, blah, 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 blah. Can I trademark that? Blah, 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 blah. I think that's something I'm going to use. But you want to make sure that documentation is up to date every time you push, because what happens is you start doing all these things, and then you say, oh, I have the intention of doing it, and then you get so far behind, it never gets done, and then your code and your documentation do not match at all. And again, you want to create a definition guide which includes terms and symbols that people wouldn't understand. Even somebody with 20 years of experience, if they're going from object-oriented to functional programming, that's a whole different thing. So you need to be able to provide those things for them. Any definitions or symbols that they wouldn't understand. And then this is for contributors, because they need to be viewed as co-authors. Because the whole point, especially if it's an open source project, This is a way to build community. This is how things get done. Community is very important. You want people to feel a part of something, not only because they're doing something for free, but because when there's community, things grow, things build. They become interested, and they take your code and they change it into something that it couldn't be by itself. So you want to create this community. So you want to have a code of conduct that outlines community members, the expected behaviors, which includes potential rewards and consequences. And you want to be clear about that. I've had several people who open source projects because of the work I do DM me and say, hey, what do you think about this? Because one guy did a post that said people on the spectrum shouldn't have to follow codes of conduct. And I was like, huh? People on the spectrum because they're diagnosing people on the spectrum at 2 and 3 years old, they've been in somebody's school from K through 12, and they know how to behave because that's a part of their individual education plan. Because he would say if they go to Harvard and they do something to offend somebody, they should. Colleges have departments that support people with disabilities, so it's not like they get a pass. No one gets a pass on being a jerk. No one gets a pass on being a jerk. And you don't get a pass because your jerk behavior causes somebody else to have an opinion about it. Everything has consequences, good, bad, or indifferent. So you want to outline that at the beginning, and that's a living document. Code of conduct is a living. Every time you come up against something, you want to sit down with your team, discuss it. How are we going to address this in the next time? Because you're never going to think about every outlier thing that happens. So you want to keep that as a living document. You want to explain the process again. You want to clearly state how questions, comments, and concerns get addressed. So if people are concerned about if it's an open source, how does the merge process? You want to write that down. Because what happens is when people have done all this work on your stuff and they don't know what's going to happen to it, people are going to stop coming. Because I've wasted my time. So you don't want that to happen. You want to develop a comment style guide to ensure that there's consistency. Okay, so particularly when you have, it's an open source project, or even if there's a team of devs, there should be a way that we comment code so that it makes it simple when somebody pulls down the code or looks at the documentation that it's consistent. That's the style guide. It needs to be there. Everybody should be writing the same way. You can't have somebody using us in one part of the code and I in another part of the code or they in another part of the code. It needs to be consistent. Again, you're writing one book. Think about how disorienting that would be if the person was speaking in first person and then all of a sudden they start speaking in third person. And you're like, who are these people? Because, it destroys the whole thing. The tense of what you do is very important to how you tell the story. And this is the best thing I know. Flag newbie-friendly issues. So there are 3 things that are out there right now. There's first timers only. There's at your first pull request and at first timers only. Do those things because what happens is you work on projects. The current state of learning to code is not, as I used to tell my high school students, this is an artificial environment. High school is an artificial, that's not how people work in the real world. These code curriculums, whether they're online or offline, are not real how you work in the real world. They're teaching syntax. They're not teaching people how to solve problems. If you have an open source project and there's something really simple, I know it'll take you 2 minutes to do it, but add one of these things to it and let somebody in the open source, a newbie, figure this out because then that's a real life problem they're solving. And then it also helps you identify people that you want to hire, that you want to work with. And then it also helps with building that community because they will become your champion, your advocates for these projects. So it's always a win-win. It's always beneficial to everybody. So in closing, that's what good documentation is. It's about, I see it as telling your story, your organization. You want to start with, the intro that says, hey, this is who we are, this is what we do, this is why you should care. And then we tell the story, we get into the meat of who killed who and who slept with whom, and just the dirty of a good story. And don't, because all you guys, somebody in here watches Housewives. Y'all watch that stuff. And it's not the nice people that stay on the show. It's the ones who throw wine at each other. So that's what a good story is, but we don't want that online, but just want a good story, just to be able to tell a good story. And then you want to end a good story. So always think about who your audience is. It is not you. You know what this thing is. It is someone else. So with that, I'll say thank you and have a great evening.